Going for it. Cracks away. Go ham. See ya.
Holy shit.
See you later. That was sick. That was absolutely insane. This tactical marine build unlocks the most insane DPS output in Space Marine 2, not only for yourself, folks, but most importantly for your teammates as well, offering you a whopping 200% increase to damage output when the chips are down. Go ham. See ya. On a personal level, you can either play this on Hall Clear duty or you can push for a more dedicated elite killer, and that is where the beauty of this class truly lies. It can fill any role really well given its massive choice of weapons. More on that later. Utilizing the heavy bolt rifle with the correct perk combinations, again, more on those later, makes this class insanely good at Hall Clear and highly formidable against Majoris and Terminus level enemies just because of the pure fire rate of bolter fire you can produce. Couple this with the correct bolt pistol and chainsword setup, again, more on that later, folks, and you can dominate from both a medium and close range with a combination of gun strikes, stuns, easy parries, and pure firepower. However, where this build truly shines is its ability to increase your team's overall DPS output at every major engagement by a whopping 200%, making this class essentially trivialize the majority of engagements, and this includes boss encounters on max difficulty. 3, 2, 1, go. Cracks away. It's dead.
What?
See ya later! Your role and playstyle in this build is very simple. Focus on pure suppressive and aggressive firepower from short to medium range to ensure a constant torrent of DPS is raining on all types of enemies, and that you are giving your team that huge 200% DPS damage increase. More on that in a moment, folks. As you will find out shortly, your perks and weaponry is optimized to penetrate multiple enemies each shot, and this gives a highly synergistic combo with the heavy bolt rifle. This works really well at medium range, but it truly thrives, folks, when in close quarters because it feeds off performing gun strikes and killing multiple enemies in quick succession to proc high damage increases and recoil decreases from perks such as Iron Grip, which gives 35% recoil reduction, and Relentless Pursuit for 25% increased damage, which then feeds into helping us proc Rampage on our weapon for a further tasty 25% increased damage. As gun strikes count as headshots, our bolt pistol is tuned for this approach, and that means we want to be trying to proc as many gun strikes as possible to both increase our overall DPS output and ensure our survivability in the form of regaining armor. As you will find out in the perks section of this video, our build generates ammo from performing execution, so forcing as many gun strikes against Majoris enemies is incredibly effective, which is why parrying warriors and squashing smallies as often as possible to break them down for gun strikes and executions is incredibly important. The icing on the cake, folks, is that Auspex Scan also reloads any unequipped range weapon within 10 seconds, so you can have a permanent uptime on both your weapons if you play this correctly. Rather than reloading either weapon, simply switch between them every 10 seconds and keep that hail of destruction coming. You should be aiming to weave between a healthy mix of gun strikes instigated by parries and light heavy and single heavy attacks from your chainsword, or small enemy executes, and rotating between both your weapons so they have reloaded passively from Auspex Scan. Speaking of Auspex Scan, it really is the star of the show here, folks, and this is the part you will have been waiting for. The 200% increase you can generate if you spec into this correctly is completely game-changing and makes the tactical one of the best squad mates you could ask for. You should be placing this as much as possible, especially when a large horde or terminus enemy is presented to you. But you might be thinking, well, how do I do that when there's such a long cooldown? And this is where the tactical marine and the Auspex Scan can truly shine, and that is when it is slotted into squads with builds that have increased class ability regen buffs as a focus. The best combination I've seen this work with so far is pairing it with a sniper and or a Vanguard. The sniper has a team perk called Squad Renewal, and this gives a 10% ability charge increase per headshot kill, and this can stack with the Vanguard's team perk Inner Fire, which also allows all squad mates to restore 15% ability charge by performing finishes. And this includes, folks, catching small enemies in the air and splattering them, and executions. So this means you can spam Auspex scan in pretty much every single fight. In fact, I've seen it happen more than once in a fight. And as long as you communicate when you're needing to secure executions, you can seriously speed up just how quickly you complete missions. You can also one-shot enemies such as lictors if your Auspex scan signature ability marked for death is off cooldown and you or a teammate land a well-placed headshot. Absolutely insane. And speaking of insanity, where this build's Auspex scan setup truly shines is dealing with extremist enemies such as the Hive Tyrant. If you stack crack grenades, melter bombs, well-placed sniper shots and a melter rifle in any order, in any amount, within the damage window Auspex scan provides, you can trivialize boss fights. Check this clip out. Nuke. Slow down, slow down. We got spawns. I'm trying to dink him. He really likes me. Oh no, I phased him. That's really annoying. I literally... Yeah, I might go down here. Hang on. Waves.
Never mind, throw him in it.
Going for it. Cracks away. Go ham. See ya.
Holy shit.
See you later.
Was that my kick?
That was everything, bro. 2 cracks.
Oh, cracks. Okay. I was like, what?
Now, in terms of the perks, I will keep this short and sweet and only mention the things that I think are highly relevant to how you might want to set this class up. So first and foremost, on your first row, I go with crack and penetrator rounds. It synergizes incredibly well with the heavy bolt rifle, giving you 1 extra penetrate with your bullets, and that also synergizes really well with a perk that we're going to go over later with the bolt rifle. You can, of course, if you're choosing to go with the plasma incinerator, take the plasma boost option for obvious reasons. You can, of course, also go with balanced distribution. So this perk line actually has a choice of 3 folks, and that's not the case for the rest of them, so don't you worry. On the second row, I use Relentless Pursuit. After a gun strike, range damage increases by 25% for 5 seconds. As you know, gun strikes are incredibly important in this build. You need to keep these off cooldown, for want of a better phrase, to keep yourself flowing through combat, keeping those armor bars full. Emperor's Vengeance, this is a no-brainer, folks. Killing a Majoris level enemy or higher restores your primary weapon's ammo by 1 magazine. If you're killing warriors or anything higher than that, you are getting a full magazine back. For the heavy bolt rifle, that's a large magazine. So you absolutely need to be picking this and making sure that you're landing your executes or getting those kills when you've got your Auspex scan out. Incredibly important. And I would recommend, if you're playing this, you make your team aware that you need to be getting at least 1 execute, 2 executes per engagement to keep your ammo topped off. If you're playing this right, folks, you shouldn't need to pick up any ammo. On the second line for our team choice, you've got recoil reduction. I don't think that's any good. Range damage increase by 5% for all squad members is what we go here, folks. It's just a flat DPS increase. Why not? And it also adds to the total of the Auspex scan in the long run. You can go with transhuman physiology, which gives all squad members 30% more contested health restore. I've tested this and it is absolutely amazing if you're in a situation where you're taking quite a lot of damage, and as we all know, you can get bursted down quite quickly. It just gives you a little bit of room to regen that health with a rapid firing weapon. It's up to you, folks. I've tried it. It does work. This 5th column's got 3 choices that are all viable in my opinion. I choose at the moment to go with Vital Data, which gives us 50% restored Auspex scan charge when we scan an extremist or a terminus enemy. That's purely because I've been Hive Tyrant hunting to power level really quickly and carry people through to get them to max level as well. However, If you wanted to, you could increase the duration of your Auspex scan by 8 seconds, which would give it 16 seconds, provided you didn't limit how long it lasts with the other perks we're going to go over. Or, and this one to me works quite nicely, and I would actually use this if it was a run with no big bosses. Enemies marked by Auspex scan take 25% more equipment damage, and that is massive with frag grenades. If you want to throw an Auspex scan down, chuck a frag grenade in, or a crack grenade maybe. Any of them really, folks. It's a really nice one to use. These next two choices are where the main bulk of our damage is coming from for both ourselves and our team. So let's get straight into that. Precise calibration. Enemies marked by Auspex scan take an additional 75% damage, but the Auspex scan's radius is reduced by 25%. A little bit of a caveat there, but folks, you just need to get accurate with this. My advice with it is throw it at the floor, don't throw it at the mob. There are so many times I've thrown it and it's gone through a warrior's leg somehow. Really frustrating and quite disruptive actually, so make sure you're thinking along those lines. And then over on the final column, I go with expert timing for this build. Enemies marked by Auspex scan take an additional 100% damage, but the mark's duration is reduced by 4 seconds. I've settled with this one when Hive Tyrant hunting, but you can also go with this one, which is concentrated fire. Enemies marked by Auspex scan take an additional 100% damage, but they lose the mark when they leave the scanned area. I think that's too detrimental across the board when dealing with trash hordes and things like that as well, so that's why I opt for this one. You could, of course, take this, which is priority targeting, back in one of the previous columns. The Auspex scan lasts 8 seconds longer, so it increases the time and it cancels out that loss. I don't particularly find it that detrimental having the 4-second minus, because you just burst things down so quickly if you're coordinated with your team. And as you're about to find out, if we coordinate our team's perks to make sure our Auspex scan is up permanently, it's not a problem, folks. You can get it up more than once in each fight, which is pretty crazy. Finally, no-brainer for me here, marked for death, our signature choice. A headshot will kill a Majoris or Extremis level enemy marked by Auspex scan. This is on a 120-second internal cooldown, separate from using Auspex scan, so 2 minutes needs to pass from when you last killed something with one shot before it'll work again. This means you can kill Lictors, Ravagers, Warriors, Zonethropes, all in one shot if they are affected by Auspex scan when this is off cooldown. I've one-shotted a Lictor a couple of times and it is so satisfying. It's too difficult to pass up on. You just need to kind of get lucky, I guess, that you haven't used it within the last 2 minutes. It can come in serious clutch and is incredibly fun to use, folks. So just to recap on that damage increase, we've got the 5% from aligned aim, we've got the 75% from the Auspex scan, and we've got the 100% again from the Auspex scan. So that takes us to 180, and then I believe Auspex scan itself is an additional 20% damage as well, which rounds us off to 200%. You can, of course, if you want to eke out a little bit more, take target lock. That gives you an additional 25% from equipment damage as well. That would work really nicely with a melter or a crack grenade. In terms of our heavy bolt rifle, which is superb at horde clear and dealing with Majoris enemies in a pretty swift way, it's either for me Gthalimor's Crusade Alpha or Gthalimor's Crusade Beta, and there's a very subtle difference between them, folks. One's got +9 firepower and +3 accuracy, and one's got +8 firepower and +6 accuracy. I actually feel myself leaning towards the one with a bit less firepower and using the +6 accuracy to my advantage. It just means when you're hip firing, which you do a lot with this weapon, you're a lot more reliable getting your shots off, and when your teammates' perks are kicking in, and if you've picked any perks that also kick in on reducing spread, it just makes it fire a bit more accurately like a laser beam. But that doesn't mean to say that this 9+ firepower isn't useful. I would say if you're more interested in staying further back, and particularly against chaos, this might be more effective. When you're ADSing, that firepower is noticeable, especially when you've got an Auspex scan off, but the choice is entirely yours between those two weapons. Little caveat, I don't particularly look at the ones with more mag capacity just because of the perks that we've got set up with the actual character. Because we can regen ammo so quickly, it doesn't really matter too much. And of course, when you holster a weapon, Auspex scan's passive ability means that I think it's after about 10 seconds, you reload your weapon anyway. So you should be switching between your pistol, which reloads fast anyway, and this weapon, and it's constantly ready to go, folks. In terms of perks, I'm going to keep this simple. I've gone for maximum damage. I tried the survivability route and I didn't like it. So really quickly, you can see it here in front of you. 10% more headshot damage, 25% more headshot damage when you're below 30%, 10% faster reload speed, maximum spread decrease by 10%. After using a class ability, maximum spread decrease by 25% for 5 seconds. So when you use Auspex Scan, that spread is reduced. Again, what I was talking about with the hip firing, it synergizes well there. Damage increased by 10% against terminus enemies. So things like your Ravagers, your Lictors, all that kind of stuff. Cleaving fire gives you shots penetrating enemy block stances, dealing 25% the usual damage. You've got a warrior walking towards you with its swords crossed. You can still damage it. Again, ADSing and shooting it in the head. Really effective there. But this one is the kicker, folks. Rampage. After killing 10 enemies in rapid succession, you deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds with an internal 30-second cooldown. This absolutely slaps and makes you a horde clearing beast for obvious reasons. You want to be making sure that you're killing as many smallies as possible. Perhaps if you're trying to take things out at long range, get those smallies killed first, then ADS. Extended magazine, 15% increased mag size, what's not to like? And then here's your choice. You can either go all the way to the end if you're against Tyranids for that 10% increased damage against them. This next one is also an absolute beast to use. Perpetual penetration. Each shot penetrates one additional target. So let's just summarize this. One penetration from there, one penetration from our perk tree. If you remember, we've picked Kraken round, so that's 2 additional penetration shots, and this really causes hordes problems. When you fire into a horde, the bullets just ricochet everywhere, and there's a little bit of a stun locking effect that goes on, and I think this is absolutely invaluable. It's almost like a bit of a CC, to be honest, and you can literally see enemies exploding in waves. It's really effective at dealing with horde clear. Moving on to the secondary, we have no choice here, folks. We only get the bolt pistol, and the one that I've been using is Gathalamore's Crusade with its +8 firepower and +7 accuracy. Again, you can switch it up a little bit to forego the accuracy for a little bit more firepower or some more ammo capacity. I like to keep it balanced. I think hitting your shots is pretty important when you're firing from the hip, and again, you do that a lot in this build. Looking at the perks, pretty straightforward for me, folks. I've gone again for maximum damage and specifically headshot damage, and I'll explain why in a moment. We've got 10% damage against terminus enemies. After a perfectly timed dodge, you deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. After a gun strike, recoil is reduced by 35% for 5 seconds. This means when you've got your heavy bolt rifle out after a gun strike, the recoil is reduced by 35%, making that hip firing really effective, as explained before. 10% damage increase, 15% increased mag capacity, 10% headshot damage. After killing a Majoris level enemy or higher with a melee weapon, headshots deal 50% more damage for 5 seconds and 10% headshot damage. The reason why we do this is because gun strikes count as headshots, folks. That means that you are getting a massive, I believe it's 70% sometimes on your headshots if you get the full stack of those 3 perks working together. That is why it is so important that you get as many of these gun strikes off and weave them into your rotation when you're in fights. This build excels when you are close, folks. Much like the secondary, we are given no choice here, folks. The chainsword is our only option here, and I have gone with Aquilian Dedication, and it's completely down to the defense trait being fencing. Now, if you don't know what that means, there's actually a tooltip here that I'll explain. Fencing gives us an increased perfect parry window. Essentially what that means is it's quite easy to land parries, and the style that I've been playing this build is just trying to force those gun strikes. So I'm not bothered about stamping, about debuffing. I'm more concerned about getting gun strikes off for that damage increase, so I can switch back to my primary weapon and start mowing things down, and of course quickly hurry up the execution process. So I am using this purely to get gun strikes off as quickly as possible, and obviously protect myself when needed and regen that armor. But that's the way this works. The melee attacks aren't really the major focus, other than if the window's there for you, or if you are just trying to get those stuns off to get those executes. So see the chainsword in this build as more of a defensive option that opens up the utility and the damage potential of this build. If you're looking for something that's more melee focused, I'm sure you could build a tactical that way. That's something I haven't yet explored, and maybe someone has and they can sound off in the comments below. Keep your eyes out for more build and tips videos for Space Marine 2, and in the meantime, drop the channel a subscribe and come check out a stream or two where we'll be exploring the game in loads of detail. Take care of yourselves, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next one.